Standing with initiatives to end rape culture and assault. Before we introduce the speakers, we would like to inform you that if you need to step away for a second or are feeling overwhelmed, please feel free to do so. You are not obligated to stay for the entirety of the event. Additionally, there is a banner at the front you can sign after the rally. As always, masks are required, and thank you so much for being here today. To start off our rally, we would like to do a chant. Everyone, repeat after me. Survivor rights are human rights.
Survivor rights are human rights.
We believe survivors.
We believe survivors.
We will not be complicit with sexual harassment and assault.
We will not be complicit with sexual harassment and assault.
No means no.
No means no.
Educate the next generation.
Educate the next generation.
Survivor rights are human rights.
Survivor rights are human rights.
We believe survivors.
We believe survivors.
We will not be complicit.
We will not be complicit.
I would now like to welcome our first speaker, Katie Hawk, a junior at Los Gatos High School and president of the Sexual Violence Free Club at LGHS.
My name is Katie Hawk. I'm 16 years old and a current junior at Los Gatos High School. If you know me well, you know that I'm genuinely a pretty tough kid. I've never been one to let people push me around. I've always been able to stand up for myself and hold my ground. But for some reason, when it came to relationships, I constantly had trouble saying no. A simple two-letter word containing just one syllable, but I couldn't seem to say it. Growing up, I had embedded into my brain that it was easier to say nothing at all than it was to say no. I was scared of the act that would happen if I said yes, and the result of what would happen if I said no. During my freshman year of high school, I made sure to set strict boundaries with the guy I was dating. I was young and had never been in a relationship prior to him. I was a freshman dating a sophomore. It made me feel special. I thought it made me cool. It started out great, or at least what I thought was great at the time. One of our first dates, we were watching a movie. I fell asleep next to him. I had previously set my boundaries with him, knowing I wouldn't have the courage to say no in the moment. I woke up with his hand in my pants. I freaked out and said I wasn't okay with it. He said, "Your eyes were closed. I thought you were enjoying it." I said, "No, I was sleeping." During our conversation about what had happened, I made the mistake of telling him that I had trouble saying no when I wasn't comfortable with something. He took advantage of this. There were many other instances throughout the relationship like this. He knew what I was comfortable with. I had set my boundaries. Unfortunately, those boundaries got torn down each time he pleaded for more. He always seemed so sweet and considerate over text. After each incident, he would text me something along the lines of saying, "I'm sorry, Katie. I shouldn't have done that. It won't happen again, I promise." I believed him every single time. When we were together in person, it was different. He was always asking and pleading to do more. I was terrified to say no. I had no courage to say no. I felt powerless. A little over a year into our relationship, I had found out that he had been cheating on me. I confronted him about it. He denied it for a bit, and then finally admitted it. I decided to stay with him because he told me that he could change, and he wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. How foolish of me to believe that. How foolish of me to believe that he would change this time, that he would change for me. The last incident occurred at the end of our relationship. We were in his car waiting for my dad to pick me up. We were holding hands and talking. He moved my hand towards him and placed it on his inner thigh. I gave him a deviating look expressing that I didn't want to do this now, not in public. He directly ignored it. I vividly remember that gut-wrenching feeling I got when I knew he wasn't going to stop. It felt as if every single bone in my body was frozen to a crisp, as if someone could simply touch me and I would crack. I was brittle and I was scared. I didn't even try to move in fear that I would break. At this moment, all I had was my words. I couldn't stay silent. I didn't stay silent. I said no. The two-letter, one-syllable word that you may believe is one of the easiest words to use. But for me, it took every bit of courage I had left to say it. Unfortunately, It didn't stop him. No means no, but in his mind, it meant nothing. My dad pulled up a few minutes later. I stepped out of his car and began the shameful walk back to mine. I didn't feel as if I was in control of my body. I was walking, but it felt as if someone was moving my body for me. I couldn't feel anything. I sat down in my car and pulled my phone out of my pocket. Multiple texts from him fled in. He was saying he was sorry for what he had done and that he wouldn't do it again. He begged and begged for another chance. I tried so hard to believe him. I tried so hard to write it off as just another light incident. I let the relationship continue for a few months after this. I was scared to end it. I was scared to be alone. I was in denial. After a while, I ultimately began to realize the damage this relationship had caused. The sleepless nights, the anxiety, the days without eating, and the feeling of feeling absolutely nothing wasn't normal. I finally realized that. I worked up the courage to end things. It took me 1 year and 10 months to do it, but I did it. I'm sharing my story today to let him know that he didn't break me. I'm still here fighting and will continue to fight every single day to break this toxic culture that has been established generation after generation. It's time to end toxic relationships. It's time to end rape culture. No means no. Not answering does not mean that I'm giving consent. My body, my choice. I stand up here today to say no. I stand up here today to be a voice for those who are afraid to speak up, afraid to leave a toxic relationship, to ask for help, or to say no. You are not alone. Look at all these people here today. We hear you, we believe you, we stand with you. I will no longer stay silent, and I will never stop saying no. Today my voice is heard. Today I say no. Repeat after me. No means no.
No means no.
Not answering does not mean that I am giving consent.
Not answering does not mean I'm giving consent.
My body, my choice.
My body, my choice.
You hear that? Your voice is powerful. Our voices are powerful. You are not alone. Once again, we hear you, we believe you, we stand with you. I will never stop fighting for you, and I will never stop fighting for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Katie. We believe you and stand with you. We will now like to bring forward sophomore and Saratoga High School student Tara Natarajan.
I'd just like to start by letting you know that this speech contains descriptions of pedophilia, rape, child pornography, and grooming that may be triggering or overwhelming to listen to. I must have been 7 when it happened. The memories from that period in my life were a blur, but your crystal clear face lives in the back of my mind. 5 minutes was all it took. The bus creaked as it trundled over the dusty highway. You stumbled over, holding onto the metal poles for support, and sat next to me. Your eyes looked straight into mine for a second. The same eyes that had followed me around campus as I filled up my water bottle in the hallway and when I walked to the cafeteria for lunch, trying to avoid your gaze. When you came to my classroom to pass a note to my teacher and discreetly brush your hand against my hair. You looked at me with those eyes as I sat frozen in my seat, watching you sit down next to me. You pulled my head down to your lap and you held me down like you were trying to drown me. 5 minutes, but they felt like hours in your hands, playing with me like I was a puppet. I was 7 years old and you had claimed my prepubescent body as your plaything. For 5 minutes, I struggled to see and breathe and speak and feel, while you stroked my hair and something mysterious in your pants pressed against my ear. Then you let me go, and before I could take another breath, you whispered to me about how much you loved me, how you had a daughter at home just like me, how you're gonna take the bobby pins holding my long hair together to remember me by, and how this was just our little secret. I must have done something bad, I told myself. It was my fault. I was dirty and broken, and you were my punishment. I tried to tell my mom about the way you looked at me in school, but I couldn't tell her what happened on that bus. She couldn't know how disgusting I must have been to have made you do this to me. All that the principal had to say was that you were a trusted employee,
and that I must have been lying about it. You had shattered my faith in adults, in goodness, in all the things I thought protected me from this world. And 8 years later, when I began my life in this country full of hope for a better future, my faith was shattered all over again. I stepped off that plane not knowing the ugly scars I was going to uncover, the insidiously hidden fibers of sexual violence that are woven into the fabric of this society. That if something like this happened again, the person who let me down wouldn't just be a principal. They would be a cop, a lawyer, a judge, a jury, a parent who could buy their son's way out of consequences, and a congressman who didn't believe he would be raped, and a president who openly boasted about grabbing women by the pussy. That faith was shattered by a high school principal who refused to acknowledge the rape culture pervasive in our community, who let Audrey Potts' abusers walk across the stage for graduation after they assaulted her, destroyed her privacy, and brought to the point where life was taken. It was shattered by Judge Aaron Persky, who sentenced Brock Turner to 6 months in jail after he violently raped an unconscious woman, because any longer would have a severe impact. Because who cares about his victim's trauma when the perp is a rich white Stanford swimmer? It was shattered by the millions of people who dismissed the Me Too movement, the ones who said the victims were asking for it, that they slept their way up, that they were in it for the attention, or else why didn't they speak up when it happened? Shattered by the quickly unraveling hypocrisy of institutions like the Catholic Church, which turned a blind eye to the rampant child abuse and pedophilia within their ranks in order to save face, much like my own school, which ignored a 7-year-old victim of sexual assault and grooming because the accused was a trusted employee. Most of all, my faith in the system was shattered because of the realization that nothing has changed. Living as a young woman in America, as a survivor of sexual assault and grooming, and witness to a system that is complicit with rape culture, I am in awe at how a first world privileged progressive community like ours was able to turn a blind eye to sexual violence for so long. I acknowledge that changes are being made and applaud the amazing individuals who have fought for so long to make it happen. But till we see the day that women are no longer told to cover their drinks at parties and bars, to walk with their keys between their fingers and pepper spray at the ready, where we don't have to concentrate every last ounce of our energy into making sure we don't get assaulted, while the perpetrators get to enjoy their 20 minutes of action and walk off scot-free, where mothers like mine don't have to move mountains to obtain justice for their daughters, and where survivors aren't called whores or crucified for showing skin, being drunk, not being respectable enough, or speaking up years later as I and so many others did. Until that day comes, I will never feel safe or comfortable in this world that I occupy. So until then, I'll hold on to my personal alarm and curl my hands in a tight fist when I'm walking on the street as I've done for as long as I can remember, and hope like hell that I will get home safe tonight. Thank you.
We are in awe of your strength, and thank you for delivering such an impactful speech. I will now introduce Leila Carlin, a junior at Los Gatos High School and a member of Sexual Violence-Free Los Gatos.
Our society is sick, not only because of the global pandemic and not just the kind of sickness that visits in the fall and winter months. We are sick with impatience, sick with frustration. Our symptoms include throwing up the same words over and over again. She was unconscious. She said no. But the doctors of our society do not seem willing to find the root of our illness. Instead, they prescribe us with pills, on which are engraved the words, "He has a future. He could not help himself. Boys will be boys." Does this cure our sickness? No. But how can we tell a doctor he is wrong? When I was 7 years old, I was told to cover up for the first time by my elementary school. When I was 8 years old, I first started to hear that if boys were mean to you, it meant they liked you. When I was about 12, I began to feel the eyes of much older boys and men following me in the grocery store, on the streets of downtown Los Gatos, and anywhere else I went. But before all of this, I was 5 years old, asking my dad, "Where's Mom? She should be back by now." And to this I received a sorrowful stare, because how do you tell your 5-year-old daughter that her mother has committed suicide? When I was 13, I learned that my mother was sexually abused in her childhood by a close family member. When she told her parents, they demanded that she never speak of it again in order to protect the family's reputation. This caused her problems that would haunt her until the day she took her life. Sexual abuse never goes away. Days, months, years, and lifetimes after the fact, it lingers. I sometimes think of sexual abuse as a piece of paper that is caught on fire momentarily. The flame burns out, but a corner of the paper is forever changed, darkened, and burnt. The piece of paper may fold over to hide its burnt corner, but it never truly goes away. My mother's family burned her, then hastily folded her over to hide her scars. And as a result, a corner of every point in my life has been darkened and burnt. Growing up, each time I would see a girl with her mom or a new friend would tell me to ask my mom, because moms are the default parent, my paper would unfold and I would feel it burn. Before I could even spell the word abuse, it took my mother away. I was never given the chance to live a life free of the effects of sexual violence. Criminologist Frida Adler once said, "Rape is the only crime in which the victim becomes the accused." This notion is something that scholars call secondary victimization, and it is essentially the root of the problem in our society. As children, we were taught to avoid sexual assault. We were never taught to put an end to it. Growing up, we always heard sentiments like these: girls, never leave your drinks unattended; girls, never walk alone at night; girls, keep your keys in between your fingers just in case. Never would the adults say, boys, don't rape. Boys, you are not entitled to violate a woman no matter what she is wearing. Boys, no means no. In order to fully understand and fight the plague that is sexual abuse, we need to recognize where it starts. When talking about statements like, what was she wearing? Was she flirting? Did she make him think he had a chance? We often categorize them as reactions to sexual abuse. But the truth is, this mindset is not a result of sexual abuse. Rather, sexual abuse is a result of this mindset. Boys are told from a young age that a display of emotions makes them weak, that they must be dominant, and that they cannot experience sexual assault. Girls are told from a young age that their bodies hold sexual value, and if they show too much, then they are sending a certain message. Why, even after hundreds of years of fighting for women, is there still a need for events like this? Why is there still a denial of the horrific events that happen behind closed doors, despite the fact that the doors are practically transparent? I feel like a broken record, as I'm sure you all do as well. Heartbreakingly, our world has reached a point so low that it feels inevitable that something like this will happen to a woman at least once in her life. But that is not a reason to stop fighting. In fact, it is a reason to fight harder than ever. When I feel like this will never change, like being a woman will forever be this hard, I think of my mom. And I think of the possibility of being a mom in the future. And then I am reminded that we must continue, no matter the obstacles we face. I did not start this fight, but I am here to continue it. I am here for every single person who has gone through sexual assault or harassment of any kind, no matter their gender or sexual orientation. I am here for every parent who has had to watch their child suffer the aftermath of sexual abuse. I'm here for my mom. I'm here for myself. It is heartbreaking and frustrating that this event must take place, but I'm extremely thankful to the amazing people that helped put this together. Thank you.
Thank you for that amazing speech, Leila. We are so happy you're here with us today. I will now bring forward Allison Tan, a junior at Saratoga High School.
Hello, everyone. First, I want to thank you for being here today. It means the world and more to me to see all of your beautiful faces. I would like to preface this speech with a trigger warning. This piece depicts very graphic imagery of rape, sexual assault, and derogatory language towards women. Please do not take this lightly and take any precautions necessary to feel comfortable and safe. This piece is called Stupid Five Senses. My elementary school English teacher taught me to use the 5 senses when writing: sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch. So I'll explain rape culture in elementary terms because calling assault what it is isn't enough. My elementary school English teacher also taught me how to use a dictionary. As a junior in high school, with an AP environmental science test to study for, French textbook phrases left unconjugated on my table, and a Khan Academy practice SAT test left untouched, flipping through a Merriam-Webster dictionary to find 2 words is quite cumbersome. So, to save ourselves the trivial task of actually opening a book for once, I searched up rape culture into the official Merriam-Webster dictionary website. No results. But perhaps you'd be interested in similar words, such as culture, type culture, gravel culture, or marker culture, if you have any idea what marker culture is. I sat and thought for a couple of days, wondering how I can deliver this message properly to do this topic justice. Alas, I was marinating in my scalding hot shower, brainstorming all the ways I can convey this message, and eventually I traced back to my elementary English teacher. Sight. As a 2nd grade in elementary school, I couldn't see rape culture. I couldn't even multiply. I could see boys being boys. School didn't teach me what sexism was, or misogyny, or racism, or any non-academic topic for that matter. School didn't teach me sex education and growth and development classes in 5th grade. They taught me girls get their periods, but don't tell boys because they'll retch in disgust. And boys can get boners, orgasms, the list goes on. I didn't even know sex was supposed to be enjoyable to both parties. Sight. As a 2nd grader, I couldn't see rape culture. I could see my guy friend walking his fingers up my legs and on my sundress to where my vagina was. And yes, I can say vagina, introducing me to the fire truck game. I didn't know what the game was. He told me, "Let's play. I do this to you and you tell me when to stop." When I said stop, he simply replied, "Fire trucks don't stop for red lights," and proceeded to hike his fingers up my prepubescent body. I didn't know what the fire truck game was, but it was enough to make my 7-year-old skin crawl under that sundress. Rape culture, you taught me to confuse abuse for love. Rape culture, you told me if he's mean to you, he likes you. Rape culture, you taught me if he hits you, he has a crush on you. Sight. I rely on you each waking day when I walk home from school that is exactly 0.3 miles away, because in exactly 4 minutes it takes me to walk to school. I can get honked at by a truck of boys, whistling and sticking their fingers in and out of their fists at me on Harriman Avenue. True story. I can get sex trafficked. I can get sexually assaulted. I cling onto my eyesight each waking day. Eyes, don't fail me now. Don't fail me while I'm walking 0.3 miles home at 11 o'clock at night because I'm too scared to get a ride from a male peer who offered me one. I feel no safeness and security. I feel no safety in male peers telling me, well, I'm a good guy. I feel no safety in male peers telling me, I would never rape you. You're not supposed to rape me. You do not get brownie points or validation for knowing what consent is. Dear rape culture, you have failed students yet again at teaching us about consent. Smell. I can smell the acid fill my esophagus, a word I did learn in school, as I have another graphic nightmare that I am being raped. The nightmares never go away. Rape culture, you ambush me in my dreams, pin me down, silence me, blame me, and make me terrified to ever fall asleep again. Don't fall asleep on a plane flight, my mom tells me. No matter how long the flight is, don't fall asleep. Didn't you hear on the news a woman who fell asleep on a plane woke up to a man with his hands down her pants? I smell the vomit produced by my body that doesn't feel like mine as I think about 1 in 3 women. 1 in 3 women will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. Smell? The smell of a man's cologne walking behind me at night is enough to make me walk fast enough to make my 4-minute walk home 1 minute, and a set of lungs deprived of oxygen. I change my clothes for track and field and stare at my arms and legs that don't feel like mine. Nose filled with the smell of sweat, enough to make me hurl as I associate it with your locker room talk. Sound. My middle school English teacher taught me what an oxymoron was. A figure of speech in which apparently contradictory terms appear in conjunction. Sound. My oxymoron, how can you both protect me from the danger of abusers and damage me with your words all the same? Sound. I'm in a circle of people playing Who's Most Likely To. You asked, who's most likely to fake a Title IX to get a good parking spot closer to campus? Let me repeat that one more time. You asked, who's most likely to fake a Title IX to get a good parking spot closer to campus? This made the following words that rolled off your tongue even worse. Allison. I think it would be Allison. But that's not the worst part. You followed me. The sound of your footsteps followed me. The sound of your voice followed me. You barely even talked to me, but still you followed me. You followed me at the dance. You followed me when I was alone from my friends for 1 second. You followed me to the dance floor. But that's not the worst part. You pressed yourself up against me on a floor full of people with nowhere to run, no pillow to stuff my face into and scream or claw my fingers into, and no room for my voice because the music was just a little too loud. Sound. Dear, dear sound, you protect me by giving me a set of ears. Maybe ears will protect me if a rape whistle or mace or car keys between my knuckles or knife bracelets or male friends won't. Ears don't fail me now. Rape culture, I shudder and collapse with every electric shock you send down my body with your stupid words. I wonder if men will ever understand how many times women cry, pleading, begging for some kind of higher entity to protect us from being raped or sexually assaulted in our lifetime. And the ones who plead, the ones who cry, we're the lucky ones, because it hasn't happened to us yet. For the rest of us, it's seen as a rite of passage. To be slut-shamed, degraded, domestically abused, raped, objectified, sexualized, it's normal. It's what we're used to. I wonder if men will ever understand the pure frustration women face by existing because our mere existence frustrates you. Men, why does my existence frustrate you? I'm tired of speaking, wasting every waking breath on you, but I have to. I have to for my friend who's been sexually assaulted twice by 2 different guy friends, who said, let's just keep what happened between us a secret. I have to do it for 16-year-old Junko Furata, who got kidnapped and raped over 500 times in the span of 44 days by over 100 grown men, bashed against the face, urinated on, and had bottles, iron bars, scissors, roasting needles, and grilled chicken skewers forced into her anus because she said no. I have to because that could be me. Men, why does our why does our existence frustrate you? I have to do it for the children being trafficked and sold to the black market all over the world every second. I have to do it for Audrey Pott. I have to do it for Daisy Coleman. One of my friends, Isabel Lee, said, "The little things turn into bigger things." What an innocent joke to you is a threat to every woman in the room because it is our reality. I feel no safeness and security. I don't feel a drop of safety when a boy tells me every guy has thought about raping someone at some point. Of course we never will, but we all have thought about it. Parents, adults, where were you when my best friend's brother told me to open my room door or he would touch me down there? I didn't know what down there meant in 2nd grade. I just knew it was wrong. I didn't want what I had down there. He was also in 2nd grade. How does a 2nd grade boy know how to say that? How does a 2nd grade boy know how to think like that? Parents, do better. Because it starts at home. It starts the second you set a 9 p.m. curfew for your daughter, but don't raise your son. It starts when you start protecting your daughter from men who your sons are growing up to be. It starts when you encourage boys to lose their virginity at a young age. Taste. I'm choking on my tears. I'm choking on my tears because if I don't, someone else has to. I hurt and I ache every second I hear another woman has been raped and dismembered on the news. It burns a hole through my heart every time I listen to my friends telling me about another incident they experienced with sexual harassment, which is every other day. It hurts me that I have not watched a single true crime episode where a woman was not raped before she was murdered. It hurts me that Marilyn Monroe was raped dozens of times by dozens of men the 2 hours following her death. Survivors are strong because they have to, not because they want to. Survivors, I believe you, and I am proud of you. Sincerely, Allie. Thank you for listening, and I will now welcome Mason Wang and Anand Agarwal, members of the Culture of Consent Task Force, as well as members of Saratoga High School's ASB, whom I hold dear to heart.
1 in 3 women is unrealistic.
I wouldn't mind being catcalled. Girls are being too sensitive.
I've been friends with him since 4th grade. He wouldn't do something like that.
Sure, he's in the wrong, but she's clearly overreacting for attention.
False allegations ruin the man's life.
I would talk to more girls to increase my street cred.
I don't support the Me Too movement, but I'll get behind the Free the Tits movement.
She's on my watch list.
Stop touching me or I'm gonna Title IX you.
Each one of these statements has been said by Saratoga High School guys. They, along with almost every guy we know, believe that these comments and jokes don't carry much meaning or have serious implications. And in response to any serious discussion about these jokes, they argue that people are being too sensitive because they're just jokes. They tell everyone to stop taking everything so seriously.
Far too many men dismiss the topic of sexual assault and harassment because they believe that they are not a part of the problem. They believe that making jokes, excuses, and ignoring victim stories don't mean anything because it's not as bad as committing sexual assault, asking for nudes, or catcalling. To those of you who believe that you are exempt from the problem because you are not directly involved, you are part of the problem.
By disregarding the language you use, staying silent when you should call someone out, or being complicit, you enable perpetrators to commit sexual harassment and assault. You inadvertently contribute to rape culture. One of the most prevalent examples of this is language. We need to be mindful of what we say regardless of intent. Because what you believe is acceptable may very well be actively desensitizing rape culture. Joking about assault is now normalized. That math test raped me.
This careless use of language surrounding such a serious topic is a direct attempt to undermine the issue, even if it isn't your intent to do so. By remaining ignorant to this, while it is such a pervasive issue in our community, we become a part of the problem.
Furthermore, the insensitive use of language can dehumanize and objectify women. Using phrases such as, "she's a whore," furthers the damaging idea that women are only objects of romantic interest. The normalization of phrases like these cultivates an environment that trivializes sexual assault.
I now want all of you to think about how you should react when you hear a survivor coming out with their sexual assault or harassment story. There should only be one correct response. You believe them. But this is not the reaction we receive from most men. His future is too bright. I've been friends with him since 4th grade. He'll learn from it. There are two sides to the story. Are all things that I've heard regarding a survivor coming out with their story. Although I shouldn't have to be providing statistics, the numbers make it blatantly clear. Survivors are telling the truth. According to the FBI's National Incident-Based Reporting System, out of 1,000 sexual assault cases, 975 of the perpetrators will walk free. Over 2/3 of sexual assault and harassment cases go unreported. Not because the victims simply don't report them, but because they fear retaliation and a lack of a support system. It takes both a physical and mental toll on victims. So when we continue to foster an environment that states innocent until proven guilty in sexual assault cases, we enable these 975 perpetrators to walk free.
So do better. These cases affect victims academically and socially, and oftentimes leads to anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Making excuses for perpetrators of sexual violence is unacceptable. Being a rape apologist is unacceptable, even if it has not been proven yet. So believe them. Believe victims. Stop making excuses for perpetrators of sexual assault because it's too much of an inconvenience for you to speak up or lose another friend.
When a group of my own friends argues that a false allegation ruins a man's life, and only one person speaks up, we are the enablers. Other people's survivor stories are not ours to laugh about, joke about, or invalidate. This makes us a part of the problem. We become a root reason that these perpetrators are able to walk free every single day. We are complicit.
Complicity is defined as the act of helping or encouraging another individual to commit a moral wrongdoing. To be silent is to be complicit. Complicity is listening to your classmates make Title IX jokes and laughing along. Complicity is nodding and agreeing to your friends' ratings for girls' bodies at your school during a sleepover. Complicity is knowing that your friend is pressuring someone to send nudes and not calling them out.
Complicity is valuing your membership in a Discord server and overlooking the misogyny present inside of it. Complicity is criticizing the legitimacy of the statistic that 97% of girls experience sexual harassment and using it as a basis to dismiss the truth of the situation.
The truth of the situation is that sexual harassment is far too prevalent of a threat for all women. Focusing on the specifics of a particular statistic, a mere number, is to ignore this truth. I truly understood this truth only recently, when planning and attending our Stand for Survivors rally in June. The speeches reminded me of a very specific conversation I had with my mom back in middle school. She was with me in Las Vegas for a basketball tournament, and she had mentioned how scared the walk back from the grocery store was, and how a man followed her for almost the entire walk. I had thought nothing of it, not because I did not care, but because it was so normalized. Upon realizing this, I thought of every other instance I had to hear about my mom's discomfort. I thought of each time my mom's coworker had told me about needing to step between her and creepy men at her open houses. I then thought of my younger sister, who will inevitably go through the same threats throughout her entire life. Each and every woman in my life has to live with the discomfort and threat of sexual harassment. And this is the truth of the situation.
We ourselves have made the mistake of being complicit in the past. We've made the mistake of thinking that we were not a part of the problem. But what is important now is that we have recognized the mistake for what it is and have actively made an effort to change.
Our mistakes, and likely many of yours, stem from a lack of education. However, once given the opportunity to educate ourselves, once we realized that some of the jokes we not only heard but made were simply wrong, we made the effort to change. We urge you to do the same. Take the initiative to educate yourself. Be the change in yourself.
Change. Change is a representation of your character, not your reputation. Character is defined as the moral qualities distinctive to an individual. Reputation is defined as the beliefs of others towards an individual, the way someone is perceived by the general public. To change does not mean to avoid complicity in a school or public environment and continue it within your friend group. Change means staying after class to inform your teacher about students making Title IX jokes. Change means actively calling your friends out in Discord servers.
Change means believing survivor stories and not questioning their credibility. Change means making an effort to branch out and talk to girls, not to simply better your reputation, but to build and maintain genuine relationships. You've now been given the opportunity to educate yourself and to make this change. Take it. Do better. Avoid repeating the same mistakes after we've pointed them out for you today.
Begin making an active effort to be aware of your and your friends' language. It can be difficult and awkward in many situations to contradict your friends. We know this. But at the very least, point out when jokes are wrong and say something, anything, when you see unacceptable behavior. Begin thinking about the guys that you surround yourself with. Do they actively use derogatory language towards women? Do they rape girls' bodies? Do they defend rapists? More importantly, is this the behavior that you want to support?
Do not be afraid to lose a friend. If they are not willing to listen, were they really a friend you wanted by your side to begin with? Defending survivors is far more important than avoiding arguments.
Begin believing survivor stories. What if your voice was silenced because people made your trauma their gossip? It should not take your mother, sister, or girlfriend going through harassment for you to realize how prevalent rape culture is. Stop making excuses to side with perpetrators of sexual assault.
Begin recognizing that you are a part of the problem, because this is the first step to addressing rape culture. Thank you.
The next speaker, I guess now, man, I know why saying no can be so difficult. Wow. I'm so impressed and I'm so touched by the strength that you guys have. You know what these guys have now? They have the strength to say no. On the count of three, everybody say no. 1, 2, 3. No. Louder. 1, 2, 3. No. These guys, for their courage and their strength of not only going through that, but getting up here and presenting to all of you is something that has really touched me. I'm so proud of all of you. Stand up and give them the applause they deserve right now. Loud, hard. You guys are going to be teaching others to say no. I am very proud to present to you my daughter Heather Hennessey, who graduated from Los Gatos High School in 2001. And she became a national champion in the 800 meters track and field. She received a lot of acclaim. She went to college on a full scholarship at USC in communications, became a national broadcaster on Fox Sport News, made me so proud. And I got to tell you, this story and what Heather went through, I didn't know myself till a couple of years ago. So here's somebody that has been through it and has been through hell, and it's something that has hurt me as a dad, as you can imagine, more than imaginable. Somebody who I think is going to better help you guys, in case you know somebody or yourself, to have that power to say no. I present to you my daughter, the most amazing girl on the planet, Heather Hennessey.
I'm gonna have my dad stay here because I usually have my dog with me, who's a therapy dog, my dog Rose. And every time I've spoken on this topic, she's been by my side. So I'm gonna have my dad stand here and thank you.
I remind her a little bit of a dog.
I just want to thank the students that have taken the time to put this together and just to be here raising awareness on an issue that is not popular to talk about. It's not something that we see in mainstream media enough. And one of the reasons I am here and really care about it is because when I was in high school, 20 years ago I graduated, and when I was in high school and went through sexual abuse, when I tried to speak up, I was silenced, and there was not an event like this. And had there been an event like this with students that are having the courage to speak while in high school, I know that my whole story during high school and out of high school could have been different for me. Instead, I was an athlete, and I went into high school with lofty goals because I had a dad that was a girl dad. I had two brothers. I was the oldest. I grew up in a home that was very sports-oriented and athletic. We rooted for all the teams in the Bay Area, and a lot of that stems from having a dad that was very into sports. And as a female, my dad never made me feel different as far as being an athlete. He treated me like I was my brothers, that I belonged on the field or on the track or on the basketball court. He always encouraged me to go for my goals, that I could be an athlete, that I could be number one, that I could go to college on a full scholarship. He'd leave me articles on my bed and inspire me to be the athlete that I was determined to be. And so I grew up playing sports with my brothers, and at that time period before I entered high school, I felt really empowered and lifted by those experiences in sports and with my dad and my brothers, that I could be an Olympic athlete. And my ultimate dream was to be a champion Olympian, but my first goal was to go to college on a full scholarship. And so I was at Dartmouth Middle School and looked up to Midi High School, which was a big sports powerhouse. And I wanted to go to Midi because of my athletic career and my dreams. And so I left all my friends, my brothers and their friends, and told my dad that I wanted to go to Midi because that's where I felt that my sports career would have the best potential. And when I went to MIDI, I was a freshman running cross country. I was winning league championships, and my entire career looked very positive for me with the dreams and goals that I had. And when I got on the track, I had played basketball after cross country, and when I had stepped on the track, I had nothing but just the most positive outlook on the rest of my high school career. And I looked up to my coaches at MIDI, because anyone that's a coach or a leader, especially at a school like that, I felt were, someone that I should follow their lead. And for me, I had a coach that slowly groomed me, became someone that I really felt I could trust, and did the process of what a lot of predators do. They groom you, they try to earn your trust. And I looked up to this person, this coach, looked up to the school. And when the coach started to turn that from being a coach into making it a relationship, about a sexual relationship, and when that started to unfold for me, I was incredibly confused. I was very naive. I didn't have any experience at that point really with dating. I should have been just, around or being in a situation with someone my age. And instead, I was really intimidated by my coach and what he was doing. He really put a lot of fear into my mindset, and instead of being what a coach should be and a leader, he twisted a lot of mental things with me, as far as fear and not telling my parents and what would happen to me if I spoke up about it. And I didn't know at 14 that happening to me would be the start of me losing my voice. I was scared that if I spoke up at the school about it, that I would get in trouble. I was scared for the safety of my family. I knew if I told my dad, that not only would he possibly go after the guy, and then I worried about what would happen to him. I also just worried in general because of all the fear he was putting on me. And when you're 14, you're already just trying to understand the world. And there was nothing at school, there was nothing like this, and that's why I go back to how important it is to have events like this, to speak up about it, because even to this day, I don't talk, it's not something that is easy for me to talk about. It's not easy for me to write a speech, it's not easy for me. Last time I spoke, I struggle in between talking about this topic because I can dissociate or get post-traumatic stress, which I've struggled with a lot and I've been diagnosed with, and it's just not an easy thing to have to focus on. But I know the importance of having events like this because of what I went through in high school, and not having it was one of the reasons that I really remained silent. And had I had, events like this and people speaking up, I felt I would have had more courage to continue to speak up. I was so terrified when I was 14 years old at MIDI that I transferred out to another high school to get away from the coach. I went to Los Gatos because they were also a great school for track and field, and was hoping to be protected. And when I went to Los Gatos and the same coach showed up continuing to stalk me and want to coach me and be near me, I did go to the head coach at Los Gatos, even though that was scary for me to do. And I knew that if I didn't tell him, that this would just continue. And when I told him, he then threatened me and said, if I continue to speak or try to talk about this again, that my entire career would be damaged, that I wouldn't be able to go to USC and get a scholarship, yes. And I used to, at that point, I went through many times of trying to actually talk with him about the situation, because for the rest of my high school experience, I was exposed to this guy every day. And at that point, I was already in fight or flight, flighting out of MIDI to another school, trying to get away from the situation and not knowing how to be able to do that and feel safe. And, you know, going to the next coach and realizing that there was no escape from this. It felt that there was no place for me to go because the schools didn't have a place where students could come speak about this sort of thing. And when I was going to the person, another coach that I highly respected in the Bay Area, he was telling me to remain silent. And that's where I really learned that, well, I learned that this culture and the schools don't have the proper things in place for a situation like this. And it's really appalling and sad to me that 20 years later, even though we've made so many advances in technology, that for some reason, this topic is something that has not made advancement. That there's still such a, just not enough talking. And although I am finding my voice, it's still something that's been unfolding for me and a process. And I feel that it's important for me to share that vulnerability, that I still feel that it's not easy, it's not comfortable. In high school, as I lost my voice with the coach, the one abusing me, and then the one that wasn't allowing me to speak up and continue to put fear in my mind, I went on and won a national championship at Los Gatos. I trained on the other side of the track, but this situation, sex abuse, tears every aspect of your life. It was infiltrating into my family. It was impacting me even with friends and teammates. It was causing drama. The other coach knew that I was telling on him, and he created just a bunch of drama with my teammates where, you know, instead of having flourishing relationships, they were all incredibly damaged. And all because of this situation with a man using his position of power to abuse a 14, 15-year-old, other girls, and myself, and not having these schools have things in place where you can go to be safe. And I think every school should have that. After I won a championship for Los Gatos, I was told by the coach, instead of running in a world championship, I was invited to go on a trip that he was putting on with the coaches in Lake Tahoe. And by that point, my voice was already pretty gone. I was able to run on the track, but I wasn't able to anymore just have my voice in general. So we were in Lake Tahoe, and the coaches and the team were talking about jumping off of a cliff that was 70-ish feet. And I didn't want to jump off of it. And I knew deep down in my gut that it was something I was really scared to do. But with everything going on with the coaches and being silenced and losing my voice, I lost that ability to say no. And no was something that I couldn't do that day when I was told to jump off the cliff. Even though everything in me was screaming that I wanted to be able to say no, that I wanted to be able to stand up for myself, that I did not want to partake in that. I remember getting to the ledge of the cliff, and jumping from that was so scary, but because I couldn't say no, I decided to do it. And when I jumped, I hit the water, and because it was so high up, it was like hitting cement. And right when I hit the water, I thought I was possibly dying. And lost all breath, and I lost the ability to move, and I would have drowned if another female coach didn't jump in and pull me to the side. And I told my coach at that point to call 911, and when the ambulance came, and I remember some of it I was a little bit unconscious for because I was so shaken up and thought I was paralyzed. But I remember being in the ambulance and wondering if I was going to be able to walk again. And I thought about just how spineless I felt, that I couldn't say no to jumping, and now here, not only was my Olympic dreams out of the question, so was just potentially my normal body and being able to walk. And a lot of that stems back to, again, not being able to say no. And I'm sad to say that I went on to USC, and 20 years now later, I'm still finding my voice. And I say that because that's how much sexual abuse and assault and rape and anything like that strips someone's voice. And I was dealing with health issues, which I've dealt with ever since that accident in my spine. I deal with endometriosis, which has been something that I know has been really exacerbated from holding in everything I have for so long. Having this inside of you, this living in your body, but not being able to talk about it. And it took up until about 2 years ago when I saw a link to the coach in the paper and saw that he was continuing to do this to girls. And that was really the only reason that pushed me to speak up and start that process. But it's been 2 years of a grind for me to even get to the point that I'm standing here talking to you all today and trying to face this, and still not sure how to do that and how to be able to help more. But when I saw that this coach is still abusing young girls, I was just appalled at the fact that, 20 years later, that this is still happening. That, look again how far we've come with technology, but why are these schools not taking this serious? Why are the numbers 1 in 3 women that are going to be abused and have to deal with this? It's crazy to me, and I really just want to be able to continue to find my voice in hopes that no one else has to go through this, because I'm standing here right now still struggling to talk about it. I still feel the shame and know that the shame shouldn't be on me, and yet it's something that lives in me and makes it really hard for me to face. And I wanted to face it knowing that this is continuing, and I felt that was God's way of pushing me to do it. And now that have been facing it, I just see that it's not, again, the easy, popular path. You know, it would be a lot easier to just not be real about it and just go about your life in a way, but how I did that for 20 years was why I got really sick and was holding so much in. And 2 years ago I had a major surgery, and I stayed at my dad's house to recover during that. And again, around that time was when I had been seeing the fact that this coach was allowed still by the schools to be coaching girls, that I just wanted to be part of anything that continues to give voice to survivors, because survivors don't speak up easily about this stuff, and survivors don't want to have to go through the shame and just feeling uncomfortable that people are going to point the finger back at them, because it's already hard enough for it to be living in your body, to mentally have to process it, to have the post-traumatic stress, nightmares, to be shamed by everyone around you or embarrassed by it. It's something that, yeah, is real. It's not easy to speak about it, and I really do just hope that high schools, that the education system, that media, that our world starts to change things for survivors and for women. I'm really passionate about women's issues, but once I spoke about my story, I had guys reaching out to me too and realized that it's not just towards women, that sexual abuse happens to men and women, and yet I do care though so much about how things are different also for women in this world. And I can say that being around sports, that although my dad as a girl dad raised me to be empowered as a female, that I didn't realize that entering the world as a female would just make things different. It made it different when I was in college, working in sports television, and experiences I went through with that, and also professional sports. That the world is just different for women. And I do want to make sure that the message gets across to men to stand up for women and to speak up, and that now we're in 2021 and we have the ability to have a voice, to actually be able to use it in a way that has been different in other generations. And I hope that athletes or men in any situation, if they're seeing things that are inappropriate, to speak up and to use your voice. Or even if you're not seeing anything, use it in a way that is going to just help the community change. Because until we change collectively, this is going to be an issue that can happen to your sister, your significant other, your girlfriend, or your daughter. As long as the world stays the way it is, that's what's going to be. The number of 1 in 3 being in these situations of rape or sexual abuse. And I know that no one wants I look at my sister who's here. She's 12 years old. She's been an inspiration to me, because being around her after I was recovering from surgery and a lot of pain, I didn't want to have to show her how I was struggling, but looking at her and just being around her presence was enough to push me also to try my hardest to be real and speak up about my story. And I just hope Hannah now doesn't have to live in a world where this is going to be something that she's going to have to face, whether that's from a relationship, someone with sexual abuse or rape or any of that. Yeah, my dad just said there's hope, and that's what I'm holding on to. I'm really holding on to the hope that you all are bringing me from putting this on and taking the time to do that and having the courage to do that, because I'm 38 and I'm still struggling to speak on all of this and to find the words to be able to do it in a way that's impactful while freezes at times, because the post-traumatic stress and everything will do that. It's real, the way it can paralyze you. So I just applaud all the students today. I hope that this world will change in a way that no one has to experience this, that this does not have to be the same stats moving forward, that we can live in a world where women feel safe, where men also feel safe to speak up against this behavior, and also desire to be real role models and to be brave enough to take a stand for what is right, and to feel that whatever you're feeling on the inside, if it's something that maybe people around you are telling you, not to speak on or this and that. If you're feeling it in your gut, like when I was at the ledge of the cliff and I felt it deep within, I felt it not to jump, but I couldn't say no. And so I really just want to make sure that you all are encouraged to be able to say no and also to speak up, even if it's uncomfortable, even if the crowd or everyone's telling you not to. Like, find that voice, find it within you to be real and what matters to you, and just know that we need more of that in this society. We need more people to use their voice in a way that is authentic and just following your intuition. If something doesn't feel right, make sure to speak up. And if someone tells you to stay silent, continue to speak up. That is something I wish that I would have known or had a place to go at school. But no matter what it is, whether you have to reach out to me or anyone in this organization or whatever it is, don't give up. Just keep trying to speak, find your voice, and know that doing the right thing at the end of the day and feeling good about that, being yourself and being authentic, matters much more than following the crowd or, just be yourself. Say no, speak up, and know that I believe you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Heather, we are so proud of you, and thank you for making students like us feel heard and understood. As the event comes to a close, the Culture of Consent Task Force would like to share resources and end with a beautiful song in the Ode to Survivors. We love you and we believe you. We want to thoroughly thank you all for coming out here today to show support. Culture of Consent was started by alumni Isabel Lee and Emily Choi to initially build upon the sex ed curriculum to better cover the topic of sexual assault and harassment. We aim to ensure others are well educated about stigmas and stereotypes and well equipped with resources and support systems. We want to continue to be proactive in our advocacy, and in an effort to provide helpful resources for survivors, we will introduce a couple of organizations and foundations that support survivors and educate about sexual assault.
The Grateful Garment Project. When sexual assault victims seek medical attention and rape kits are performed, those victims are asked to surrender their clothing for DNA evidence. Once clothing has been surrendered, the victims of assault have nothing else to wear home but a hospital gown. The Grateful Garment's mission is to ensure that every victim of a sexual crime who crosses the threshold of a sexual assault response team facility or who seeks medical attention/law enforcement involvement is provided with whatever new clothing, toiletries, snacks, and other miscellaneous items that they may require.
They work with hospitals, shelters, law enforcement, and other nonprofits to meet victims' immediate needs after a crisis and support their ongoing needs along their road to recovery. You can support them by donating to their website or fulfilling any of their wish list items. They also host an Amplifying Dignity program where any of you can volunteer virtually. For details and more ways to get involved, please visit gratefulgarment.org.
One Love. One Love educates young people about healthy and unhealthy relationships, empowering them to identify abuse and learn how to love better. If you are a student, you can get involved by becoming a student leader at leadership events and skills training, national ambassador programs, and more. They also provide detailed resources and guides for anyone to host One Love workshops and fundraisers. All of this information and more can be accessed at joinonelove.org.
The Audrey Pott Foundation. You can support the Audrey Pott Foundation by learning how to donate on their website, audreypottfoundation.com. Their foundation provides anti-cyberbullying presentations to schools, art and music scholarships, and grants for school therapists. An additional resource is Cassie, a therapy service provided at our high school that can help students receive therapy. Please keep in mind that Cassie therapists are mandated reporters, so confidentiality will be broken if you or someone else is in danger or harm.
CASI therapists and licensed therapists can be found in the Wellness Center, located behind the Student Center on campus. The Wellness Centers provide an array of calming activities and resources for struggling students who need a break or mental health support.
Lastly, we want to give a big thank you to Heather Hennessey for being a catalyst for so many student survivors to share their survivor stories and continuing in her advocacy around the Bay Area. We are endlessly proud and grateful for all that you do. Additionally, we want to thank Los Gatos students and community members, specifically from Survivors for Survivors, a nonprofit organization, the Me Too Los Gatos team, and the Sexual Violence Free Club at Los Gatos High School for helping us educate ourselves on ways to be proactive and good allies and supporting us throughout this journey.
We would now like to welcome our final performance, Anastasia Ramirez and Anjali Falque, as well as Noah Marquez on the guitar and Zachary Zinman on the drums. things that you do.
Thank you to everyone for coming and listening. We are forever grateful.
Thank you everyone for coming today. You can now leave, but before you go, make sure, if you have the time, to sign the banner in the front. Thank you so much for coming.
But to be in there